Hey everyone, it's Johnny Catrue, and today I'm continuing my journey through Argentine prog rock with Películas by La Máquina de Hacer Pájaros. This band is fronted by the one and only Charly Garcia, who I've seen referred to as the madman of Argentinian rock music for his unbridled creativity and his willingness to always change his style from project to project. The first album I heard from Charly Garcia was Pequeñas Anécdotas sobre las Instituciones by Sui Generis, which was the last and most progressive album from that band. And while I certainly did find plenty to enjoy on that album in its theatricality and musicianship, I wasn't always entirely taken with the tunes themselves, which sometimes I found to be more overblown than emotional. But I was absolutely intrigued by the ideas and the variety of sounds found on the album. So I also checked out something in an entirely different style and from a different time by Charly Garcia, his solo album Clics Modernos, an album which saw him making more new wave inspired pop music. And I actually ended up enjoying this album even more, as it really emphasized his own unique style of songwriting and singing. I felt like I knew Charly Garcia much better as an artist after hearing this album, but of course since then I've been very interested to hear more of his work in the world of progressive rock. Películas by La Máquina de Hacer Pájaros has been recommended to me by several of my viewers on my previous videos about Luis Alberto Spinetta. You can see my video about the Almendra album with the link up here. So I'm very pleased and excited to be jumping into the album today. So time to give the album my very first listen. And of course I'll give you my thoughts after each song. If you enjoy the video, please click the like button and leave me a comment down below to let me know what album you think I should listen to next. So time to start listening. Track 1 is called Obertura 777. Okay, so straight away the influence of the jazz funk and fusion of the time is very clear. Perhaps they'd been listening to Return to Forever, Weather Report, maybe Herbie Hancock's jazz funk albums. I know other prog bands at the time, such as Bruford and Brand X, were working in similar styles around the same year. Very funky, very groovy, but also especially towards the end, building to a more of an epic mood, which I did find quite interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing where they go next with this. Track 2 is called Marilyn, La Cenicienta y las Mujeres. Okay, very interesting. So I can still very much hear the theatrical element that was prominent in Sui Generis. It seems to be in Charly's nature to really sell his music to you with flamboyance, pushing everything as over the top as he can. That's the feeling I get from the way he sings, especially. But the tightness of the band in this case is what sets it apart. Still, this definitely sounds like a development of what he was doing in the earlier work, which I didn't entirely expect. It's quite interesting. It makes me excited to hear where he's going to take the sound as we continue through the album. So the next song, track 3, is called No te dejes desanimar. Okay, so we got even more diversity in style on this song, as it starts off sounding like a Beatles-influenced piece of orchestral pop in the beginning. But as it moves forward, you get more of this classical-influenced intricacy, which leaves it almost sounding a bit like Gentle Giant at times, which is not where I was expecting it to go at all. But this is all with Charly's unique brand of theatricality over the top of it. So it's almost like he's putting all different influences and styles he loves underneath, while he layers his own personality onto the top of it, which is great fun. I'm also reminded a bit of Supertramp's 70s work, which is probably because of the theatrical singing with quite prominent piano underneath. I think that's what's doing it. I'm not the biggest fan of that sound, but I think that all the other things I'm picking up from it are keeping things rather more interesting for me than I would find a Supertramp record. So the next song is track 4. It's called Que se puede hacer salvo ver películas. Wow. Okay, that was really good. I loved that. First, I want to say I'm not too familiar with Latin jazz genres, but this sounded like a bossa nova groove to me at the very start. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, that went to so many different places after that. I'm really enjoying how we never know what we're going to get track to track on this album so far. Each song has had its whole own mood, which I love that in an album. And I actually really love the melodies on this one as well. I really enjoyed so much about this song. It really had everything I look for in music. It had beautiful melodies, it had amazing instrumental passages, it had changes in mood as the song progressed. I'm really going to look forward to going back to this one and digging into all the changes, all the different melodies, all the impressive instrumental passages. Yeah, this is my favorite track so far, without a doubt. I really enjoyed it. So moving on to track 5, I had a couple people request this particular song, in fact, so I'm quite interested to hear it. It's called Iper Candombe. Did I say that right? Let me know. Right on. So this song struck me as it sounded like it was written maybe as like a bluesy rock song, but then it's been augmented with the thrill of jazz fusion in the instrumental. So yeah, it made for a very exciting combination. When Charlie growls in his singing, sometimes he reminds me of Peter Hamill from Van de Graaff Generator, which I think is a comparison I've had in the back of my mind for a while, but this is the first time I've actually managed to pinpoint what it was I was remembering. And yeah, it's cool because I don't know if I've heard Peter Hamill make anything as rockin' as this. So yeah, a really cool combination going on in this song. I enjoyed it. So track 6 is called Vendedor de las Chicas de Plástico. Okay, quite a sudden stop on that one. At the start of this song, I was reminded of the very beginning of the album because it was coming in again with this quite straight up jazz fusion sound, but with something more epic about it than you might usually get. And I thought Charlie's voice sounded really good on this song, really clear and confident. I enjoyed it, wouldn't say it's one of my favorites though. So track 7, next song, it's called Ruta Perdedora. Alright, so this one had a pretty interesting structure. At the start, it was another song with Charlie's personality very upfront, which I liked, and I especially enjoyed the very prominent synthesizer parts in that part. But then it went into this really quite complex jam around the middle point, jam around a really memorable riff, which I thought was really cool, before returning to the original melody but in an instrumental form. With a big finish. So yeah, I really enjoyed the layout of that song. And that leads us into the last song, track 8, which is called En las calles de Costa Rica. Very nice, out with a bang. Yeah, so we leave the album, the closing track being another impressive instrumental, as we started with. Incredible guitar playing. I mean, all the playing has been fantastic throughout the whole album. But I really like how no player has been really dominant. It's not like every song had a guitar solo or every song had a keyboard solo. It was really like everyone has had a chance to shine, and it keeps things interesting for us, the listener, because you don't know what instrument you're going to hear next. You don't know how it's going to be played. There's a surprise around every corner, and I love that. So yeah, a great last track to a really impressive album. I enjoyed it quite a bit. So in conclusion, this was definitely more my cup of tea than what I heard on Sui Generis, although I did enjoy what I heard of that band. I think that this band has definitely pushed things to a point where I'm a lot more excited by what's going on. And I was glad to hear that we can still hear Charly Garcia's personality throughout the whole thing. His unique style of performance is still at the forefront, but he's bolstered its presentation with the incredible musicianship of La Machina in this case. The jazz fusion instrumentals, which were pretty common at the time this album was made, are not necessarily something unique in and of themselves. They're very well done, and I enjoyed them a whole lot. But it's the mixture of that sound with Charlie's unique style of songwriting, which has obviously come from the world of folk and pop, but he's putting it in this new context, which is something I don't think I've heard in any other project. So I was really excited by that. It sounds great. And it made this album a very interesting listen. So I want to say thank you to everyone that recommended me this album. You were definitely right to recommend it to me. It was very much up my street. If you've enjoyed my reaction and review, please consider using the link in the description to buy me a coffee. Anything you can donate will really help me to keep the channel going and keep making these videos, so I'll appreciate it. Now let's head over to Rate Your Music to have a look at the ratings and see what people are saying about the album. So here we are on the Rate Your Music page for Películas. And as you can see, it has a 3.86 from about 700 ratings, so pretty high. It's the 27th highest rated album for 1977. It's listed under genres of prog rock and jazz rock, which seems about right to me. We've also got Latin jazz there in the secondary genres. I don't know if we can figure out which specific Latin jazz genres are influencing the album here. If you know more about that, please let us know in the comments. And if we go down here to the track ratings, we can see that the highest rated tracks are Que se puede hacer salvo ver películas and Hippocandombe. And for sure, track 4 was my favorite on the album, without a doubt. I mean, I was blown away with that song. So I'm glad to see it's also one of the highest rated songs on the album. Now let's take a look over some of the comments. So this user named Backdoor Night called the album Lounge Prog. And I suppose he's referring to the fact that lounge music is descended from jazz fusion, so it became kind of a cliche into the 1980s as not a very exciting kind of music to listen to. But I think at this point in the 70s, jazz fusion was still new and exciting, and I think on this album it still sounds very fresh and exciting, and the mixture of it into the prog rock that Charly Garcia was making at the time was probably really fresh, and it still sounds great to me now. So I wouldn't put it down calling it lounge prog, not at all. But I understand where he's coming from. Dr. Merkundigilibe, I have no idea if I'm saying that user's name correctly, but they said, well-deserved bold album, means it's high rated in its field. El mejor álbum del rock progresivo de Latinoamérica. So the best album of progressive rock of Latin America. It's a pretty bold statement, but obviously it is a very well-regarded album. Let me know in the comments if you agree with that statement. It's definitely one of the most impressive ones I've heard so far. Does it compete with El Jardín de los Presentes by Invisible? I'm not too sure. I don't think it hits the emotional heights of that album for me. I'd say it's definitely matching the instrumental impressiveness of that stuff. And obviously it's operating in a pretty different kind of field. It's Charly Garcia and Luis Alberto Spinetta clearly had very different goals with their music by this point, which is fascinating to me. So this user, Usurper123, said the lyrics are painfully misogynistic, but still a killer album. Now, I don't focus on lyrics when I first listen to an album, even when the lyrics are in English and easier for me to understand. And in this case, I very much didn't pick up on anything. But the next comment is from user Sarubosado, and they said, I don't think they're meant to be misogynistic. They even sample A Doll's House, and Las Muñecas de Plástico reads as satire. Okay, so it sounds to me like maybe the lyrics are taking the mickey out of people who are misogynistic, taking the piss a little bit. So that would make sense to me. But obviously, I'm not sure. But again, please leave me a comment below to let me know what you think of this take. So for everyone that was looking forward to me listening to some Charly Garcia on this channel, I hope you've really enjoyed the video. I really enjoyed the album. Please leave me a comment down below to let me know what you thought of it and let me know what you would like to hear me listen to next. As I said earlier, you can use the link in the description to buy me a coffee to support the channel. I really appreciate anything you can do there. Thank you very much for watching this video. Until next time, take it easy.